It ain't y'all go back to your hoods and tell your homies ceasefire. That's not what it was about.
Federal agents just dropped a bombshell tying Kendrick Lamar's own inner circle to the 2024 shooting outside Drake's Toronto mansion, and the whispers are already sounding dangerous. Word on the street is J-Rock and Mob James have been dragged in for questioning, and the little details leaking out are wild enough to flip this whole Drake versus Kendrick beef from lyrical sparring into something that looks like a federal case. The feds aren't moving on rumors anymore. They're moving on hard receipts. Court filings reveal Drake's legal team is digging deep into Kendrick's private life, demanding documents that could drag out everything from domestic abuse claims aimed at Whitney Alford to questions about the paternity of Kendrick's kids. But here's the twist. Dave Free, Kendrick's right-hand man, is actually named right alongside those abuse allegations and is now being linked to suspicious moves on the very night of the Toronto shooting. That connection is shaking things up in a way nobody saw coming. And it gets even more scandalous. That shooting didn't just happen randomly. It went down just 2 days after Kendrick dropped Not Like Us, the diss track flaunting Drake's actual mansion on the cover. Drake swears that record was artificially boosted through bot farms allegedly tied to Interscope's marketing machine. The man accused of running the whole shady bot operation? A figure named Kojo Mi Asa. Someone Drake's lawyers claim they had to chase with private investigators just to pin down. But here's where the danger really spikes. A Toronto police insider hinted that the timing and method of the shooting match exactly how certain West Coast crews send messages without even stepping foot in your city. That's not just rap beef, that's organized silence breaking into the open. And here's where it gets even heavier. One of the loudest voices speaking on this madness is Mob James, a man who lived that life inside some of the most feared sets in Compton.
Police were called to a shooting at the residence behind me.
When he was asked about Drake ever stepping foot again in certain West Coast neighborhoods, he didn't sugarcoat a thing. Mob James flat out said he doubted Drake could walk those blocks in peace, not because of music, but because of the bad blood that never fades once certain street lines get crossed. And let's not forget what's at the center of all this. We're not talking about punchlines or slick bars anymore. We're talking about a man catching a bullet outside Drake's $100 million Toronto fortress, just days after Kendrick dropped a diss track bold enough to use Drake's mansion as the cover art. That's not coincidence, that's a line drawn in fire. Now, before anyone says Mob James was just throwing wild accusations, pay attention. He wasn't out here reckless. He carefully hinted that when celebrity beef spills into real life, the real players moving behind the curtain often aren't the rappers themselves. It's the people around them, the ones with no platinum plaques, no fame, but with ties that run so deep they never had to touch Spotify to shake a whole coast. And while Mob James played it cool with that OG wisdom, J-Rock came in swinging loud the same day the shooting made headlines. He didn't hold back. He went online clowning Drake's fan base, mocking them with the nickname the 69 God, the same sting Kendrick used in Not Like Us. That's not just shade. That's straight up gasoline poured on a fire that's already burning out of control.
Police presence along this road. This is Park Lane Circle. It's the street that Drake lived.
J-Rock wasn't hiding his cards. He picked a side clear as day. And if you've been following this story, you know his loyalty to Kendrick runs way deeper than just music. That TDE bond is like family. So much so that people are starting to wonder if his social media shots were more than playful banter. This isn't just rap anymore. It's starting to look like a chessboard where every move feels calculated. While J-Rock was busy clowning Drake's fan base, Drake's legal team was on another mission. Dropping subpoenas on Kojo Mi Asa, the elusive marketing exec Drake swears was behind the shady bot farms inflating Not Like Us streams. And guess who sits deep in that same ecosystem? None other than Dave Free, Kendrick's longtime partner at PG Lang. Now, the feds haven't gone public with any official claims tying Dave Free or J-Rock directly to the Toronto shooting, but word behind the scenes is they're definitely being pressed with questions. Investigators are quietly asking about phone calls, movements, and suspicious contacts in the days leading up to May 7th. That's the kind of digging that makes insiders sweat. And let's be real. If you're wondering why federal agents care so much about a so-called hip-hop beef, it's because they've seen this movie before. Whenever rap crews start looking like organized units, it rarely ends with a press release or a handshake. The real fear is that all these threads could spin into something bigger, something RICO level, where beef becomes a criminal conspiracy on paper. Here's the part nobody can argue with, the timeline itself. Straight from Toronto police chatter, May 7th, 2024, around 2 a.m., A vehicle rolls up slow near Drake's $100 million Bridle Path estate. This isn't random chaos. No revving engines, no shouting, just a deliberate, careful pull-up in a neighborhood that's usually silent at that hour. That's not noise, that's precision.
I think Drake have a problem coming to Compton now.
Okay. And we'll...
Yeah.
A man steps out of the vehicle, raises his weapon, and fires a single round straight into Drake's on-duty security guard's upper chest. In less than 30 seconds, it's over. The shooter dives back into the car, and the vehicle vanishes into the night like it was never there. Police sources stress how fast and precise it all went down, and that detail is crucial, because this wasn't the work of some drunk with a pistol. This was practiced, cold, and intentional. The victim, a veteran guard from Drake's trusted security rotation, a man who's been protecting him for years. He's rushed into emergency surgery, and while he survives, the injury is so severe that even hardened investigators are calling this hit exactly what it looks like, a carefully delivered message. And here's where it gets chilling. 3 pieces immediately raise alarms. First, the cover art connection. Just days earlier, Kendrick had dropped Not Like Us with Drake's own mansion plastered across the artwork. In street language, that's not artistic expression, that's an address drop. Second, the timing. The hit comes only 2 days after the record went public, right in the ugliest stretch of their lyrical war. Too close for coincidence. Finally, a West Coast law enforcement contact points out the method itself. A single round, one high-value target, then a clean exit. That's the exact style certain SoCal crews have perfected when sending a stay-in-your-lane warning. It's surgical, not sloppy. Now, Toronto PD hasn't officially tied Kendrick's camp to the shooting. They're treading carefully in public. But here's the real play behind the curtain. Federal agents are already cross-referencing phone pings, travel logs, and private movements tied to Dave Free, J-Rock, and Mob James. The picture is being drawn, piece by piece, and it's darker than anyone expected. This whole mess ties right back to the same case where Drake is suing Universal Music Group over alleged botting for Not Like Us. And if you're wondering how a music streaming fraud claim ends up tangled with a shooting investigation, that's exactly where the plot twists. The working theory? The same network accused of pumping Kendrick's streams with bots might also have the reach and the muscle to orchestrate a hit from a distance. That's not just music politics, that's organized chaos blending business with blood. Now here's where things leave the streets and slide straight into billion-dollar boardrooms. Drake's lawsuit against Universal isn't about bruised ego or losing a rap battle. It's a knife fight over whether UMG's own CEO, Lucian Grange, greenlit a campaign to boost Kendrick's diss track right while his team was locked in contract talks with Drake. That's not marketing, that's corporate sabotage. Drake's legal squad is swinging hard, demanding Grange's emails and texts, claiming they'll expose that UMG's marketing machine wasn't just promoting Kendrick, but deliberately smearing Drake's brand to squeeze a better contract renewal deal. Meanwhile, UMG is stonewalling the entire thing, calling Drake's lawsuit nothing more than a face-saving stunt after taking an L in the rap war. But behind the scenes, insiders are sweating. Here's the angle mainstream headlines haven't touched. If those emails ever get unsealed, and if they show any coordination between Grange, PG Lang, or Kendrick's circle, prosecutors could frame it as conspiracy. Not just civil, but criminal. And now that bullets have already entered the storyline, that paper trail could turn into courtroom fireworks nobody in the industry is ready for. All of this chaos still ties back to one case, Drake suing Universal Music Group over alleged botting for Not Like Us. And here's the crazy part. What starts as a music streaming fraud claim is now crossing directly into a shooting investigation. The working theory is wild. The same network accused of boosting Kendrick's streams could also have the connections to pull strings for a long-distance hit. That's not just business, and that's power being flexed in the darkest way. This is where the beef leaves the block and walks straight into billion-dollar boardrooms. Drake's lawsuit against Universal isn't about pride or rap bars. It's about whether UMG's CEO, Lucian Grange, actually greenlit a campaign to push Kendrick's diss track while his team was negotiating Drake's contract renewal. If that's true, it's not strategy. It's corporate betrayal dressed up as marketing. Drake's lawyers are swinging heavy, demanding subpoenas for Grange's emails and text records, claiming they'll prove Universal's machine wasn't just promoting Kendrick, it was actively trying to stain Drake's brand and tip the scales in contract talks. On the flip side, UMG is stonewalling like pros, insisting Grange had no real involvement and calling Drake's whole case nothing but a face-saving stunt after he lost the rap war. But here's the angle no one's really talking about yet. If those emails ever crack open, and if they show even a trace of coordination between Grange, PG Lang, or Kendrick's circle, prosecutors could argue conspiracy, both civil and criminal. And now that a violent shooting is officially tied to the narrative, those inboxes might be holding the evidence that turns hip-hop's biggest feud into a courtroom earthquake. The reason this piece of the puzzle matters so much is simple. Federal investigators live off patterns. They don't just see one shooting in a vacuum, they break it down by motive, opportunity, and benefit. And if evidence shows that UMG's top exec had any contact with Kendrick's circle before or after May 7th, it flips the entire investigation into overdrive. While lawyers play chess in the courtroom, the streets and feds are watching every move like hawks. Meanwhile, J-Rock is still outside stirring the pot, firing off tweets like, "Don't be mad at me, 69 God lost on his own." That's trolling at its loudest, but here's the kicker. If you're a prosecutor trying to connect dots, a public taunt right after a violent incident can be spun as proof of awareness or even involvement. That's why his name, along with Mob James, is now quietly sitting on the federal questioning list. Not as prime suspects, but as voices who might have overheard things, been in the wrong rooms, or can help map out Kendrick's protective circle. And anyone who knows how the feds work understands this. Once they start bringing people in for informal talks, it's rarely casual. They're studying reactions, reading body language, and testing whether the stories line up. It's less conversation, more trapdoor. Then there's Dave Free. On paper, he's the visionary co-founder of PG Lang, the creative mind behind Kendrick's iconic rollouts. But to Drake's legal squad, he's way more dangerous than that. He's the man they believe holds keys to two different flashpoints: the domestic violence document request and the timeline of movements on the very night of the shooting. If Dave Free gets subpoenaed and anything he confirms overlaps, whether it's travel logs, calls, or payments connected to botting or West Coast to Toronto ties, this case won't just be about music anymore. It could explode into something that redefines how hip-hop beefs get prosecuted in America, something prosecutors could eventually put in front of a grand jury. And just when you think this is all lawyers, contracts, and sealed subpoenas, another thread is pulling tighter. The possibility that the shooting outside Drake's estate wasn't even designed to kill, but to send a message he couldn't ignore. And Mob James knows that world better than most. His voice carries the weight of someone who's seen the difference between chaos and calculation. When Mob James spoke on Drake and Kendrick's war, he didn't outright say the shooting was linked, but his tone made people lean in and listen twice. In street terms, there's a massive difference between a hit and a message. A hit ends a life. A message rattles the target, shakes their foundation, and reminds them that lines have been crossed. It makes the next move feel dangerous before it's even made. That's exactly why insiders are whispering that the Toronto shooting wasn't about killing Drake or even his guard, but about showing how close someone could get. One shot, one chest hit, no spray of bullets, no messy crossfire. That's not wild violence, that's precision. A survivable injury designed to prove a point. We got this close, and we could have gone further. And then comes the part that makes this whole thing feel like theater with teeth: the symbolism. The timing hits just 2 days after Kendrick drops Not Like Us, complete with Drake's mansion on the cover art. That isn't just petty shade in a rap beef, that's personal. That's the kind of move that blends art, ego, and street politics into one chilling warning. Now here's where things cut even deeper. On the West Coast, there are alliances and rivalries that existed long before Kendrick was a superstar. Ties that snake through managers, promoters, and even private security firms. And right in the middle of that history is Dave Free. He's been in Kendrick's orbit since the early TDE days, long before PG Lang was even an idea, which means he's brushed shoulders with people from those older circles, and maybe still does. To be clear, there's no proof that Dave Free or J-Rock ever made a call about the Toronto shooting, but prosecutors know better than to ignore the folks closest to the alleged target. They're looking at facilitators, people who don't get their own hands dirty, but can quietly open a door for someone else to walk through. And that's exactly why Dave Free's name keeps circling back. He's close enough to Kendrick to be worth asking questions that might connect dots. When Mob James warned that Drake couldn't set foot in certain parts of Compton without tension, it wasn't a threat, it was a reality check. In his world, old grudges don't fade just because the spotlight does. And if you add in Drake's public jabs at Kendrick, some neighborhoods could easily take it as straight up disrespect aimed at the wrong person. That perception alone can shift how deep the heat runs. Now factor in a federal case already circling Kendrick's circle like sharks, and suddenly even theories start to look like evidence. The bigger picture? Drake's not just battling Kendrick on wax, He's fighting him across every arena, courtrooms, corporate offices, and yes, even in the streets. These lawsuits and subpoenas aren't random paperwork. They're calculated pressure points designed to make Kendrick's camp slip, reveal, or crumble. Drake's legal team isn't stopping at streaming numbers. They're going for the jugular. They filed requests digging into domestic violence allegations tied to Kendrick and his fiancée, Whitney Alford, paternity documents to confirm if Kendrick is the father of his kids, and any dirt that might expose Dave Free's role in Kendrick's personal or professional life. This isn't a lawsuit anymore. It's a full-blown fishing expedition for leverage. Think of it like a chessboard. Every single request is a move designed to either corner Kendrick legally or squeeze someone in his circle until they break loyalty and start talking. Drake also knows UMG doesn't want their CEO, Lucian Grange, dragged into discovery for what looks like a rap beef gone nuclear. The bigger that angle grows, the more pressure Grange could throw back at Kendrick's camp to settle or cooperate behind the scenes. And here's where it gets chilling. If cooperation happens while a federal probe is already active, that's the point where names start getting named. What looks like a corporate fight could suddenly snowball into sealed testimonies and federal files that reshape the whole story. Here's the part most people are missing. Drake's legal play might not even be about winning in open court. By demanding domestic violence records, paternity proof, and corporate communications all at once, he's creating a stress test. He's not just chasing evidence, he's watching how Kendrick's team reacts under a sudden, heavy, sustained wave of pressure. And in high-profile wars like this, the reactions can reveal more than any leaked email or secret text ever could. If a phone suddenly goes dark, if a flight gets booked at the last minute, or if someone in Kendrick's orbit lawyers up after months of moving freely, those are signals investigators watch like hawks. On the outside, this might look like just another messy rap feud, but from a federal perspective, you've got a cocktail of red flags, a high-profile shooting, whispers of corporate chart manipulation, legal motions hinting at domestic abuse and fraud, and suspicious travel overlaps between the West Coast and Toronto. That's more than enough for the feds to justify months of quiet surveillance without ever filing a single charge. And here's the cold truth. History shows the feds don't knock on your door unless they're already holding half the evidence. Which means the scariest next step is creeping closer, the possibility of sealed indictments. That's the nightmare nobody in Kendrick's camp wants to face. Talk to the legal insiders watching this storm, and they'll tell you flat out, sealed indictments aren't just gossip, they're a very real possibility. Why? Because when the feds believe a high-profile target might run, tamper with evidence, or trigger street retaliation, they don't announce charges to the world. They move in silence, stack the paperwork, and let the hammer drop when nobody's ready. When the feds lock indictments under seal, they don't just sit back, they keep stacking evidence until the moment it'll hurt the most. And if you think that sounds far-fetched, remember, this exact playbook has been used before in celebrity-adjacent cases where a single shooting was only one thread in a much bigger conspiracy. If sealed indictments really exist here, the most brutal time to unseal them would be right before Kendrick's next major drop or tour announcement. Picture it, a PG Lang rollout colliding with federal headlines. The PR damage alone would be catastrophic, the kind of blow that makes even the most loyal affiliates rethink everything and start cutting deals. And for Drake, that timing could be like a tactical nuke. His lawsuits, subpoenas, and carefully placed media moves could all be setting the stage for one devastating moment where Kendrick's entire circle is forced to respond while the feds tighten the grip. Meanwhile, Mob James, who had plenty to say at first, has gone dead silent. No interviews, no new quotes, nothing. And in federal cases, sudden silence usually means one of two things. Either someone's laying low to avoid feeding the rumors, or they've been told not to speak at all. And if it's the latter, that means the list of people under active questioning is smaller, tighter, and way closer to Kendrick than anyone on the outside imagined, and that's when the questions get chilling. Was J-Rock's non-stop trolling, Dave Free's suspicious positioning, and Lucian Grange's mysteriously hidden emails all part of the same puzzle the feds are quietly piecing together? Because if this really is sliding towards sealed charges, we're not just looking at another rap beef headline. We're staring down a case that could rewrite how the music industry handles feuds once real-world violence crosses the line. But here's the twist nobody wants to face. When the truth finally drops, will Kendrick's camp be cleared in one dramatic swoop? Or will the world find out this so-called lyrical war was just the cover for something far darker brewing in the shadows all along? Either way, the next chapter could flip hip-hop history upside down. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with everyone who needs to hear what's really going down. We'll see you on the next one.